I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Well, now Johnny Vegas has broken his silence. A few minutes ago, TV detective Mark Williams Thomas posted a video on X describing his debrief with Ayub Qassim, aka Johnny Vegas. This interview provides slightly more detail and, shall we say, color, which adds a little more perspective to what we know so far. If anything, it sharpens our knowledge and it shifts the needle of our knowledge base in the right direction. And so what insights do we draw from Qassim's statement, from this additional detail? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Again, you are cordially invited to join us on Patreon. If you're enjoying this analysis, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. So a couple of insights from that interview. 14 insights in total. Number one, Jay wanted to carry on partying. Well, this is confirmation of what we've heard elsewhere from Lucy, and also supports footage we see of Jay and accounts of him falling around. Clearly, that fateful night, the 19-year-old was having the time of his life. Now, let me ask you, do you believe that Jay wanted to carry on partying? Do you think that if you're 19 years old and it's 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock, that you might want to continue partying if you've traveled all the way to Tenerife? Number two, Jay said he had nowhere to stay. Now, it's not clear why he would have said this. It's possible Jay and Lucy had a tiff, maybe even Jay and Brad had a tiff, and so perhaps he felt awkward going back to the hotel. But it seems very clear that he did have somewhere to stay because his stuff was still in his hotel. It could also be that Johnny Vegas, aka Qassim, is not being entirely forthcoming on this point, and that it's not that he had nowhere to stay, it's that he wanted something else. Now, if you think about it, Jay wasn't interested in somewhere to stay because he didn't stay or sleep in the Airbnb. He wanted somewhere to continue partying and possibly stuff to fuel the next phase of the evening. And isn't that where the Airbnb folks came in? Number three, in the car they played music and chatted. Well, no mention here about a stolen Rolex or that Jay was on his phone at this point. Snapchatting, apparently. And so saying that they were playing music and chatting, I'm not sure if that's really telling us what we really need to know. Number three, they stopped to have a drink at a cafe in Santiago del Telde. Sorry, that's number four. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this is where one of the bogus sightings occurred many hours later. The blurry footage of the abominable snowman, pardon the pun. And if it is, I'm not 100% sure if it is, but if it is, it makes complete sense that they would stop here because Jay didn't want the night to be over. And so they had a couple more drinks. And what this also suggests is that Jay was still consuming alcohol as late as 5:30 a.m. That's close to 2 hours before he left the Airbnb. Number five, when they arrived at the Airbnb, both men seemed to want to crash, while Jay asked for a cell phone charger. Number six, Jay also asked for a cigarette and Qassim offered him a Camel cigarette. Now, wasn't there some talk that he went to buy cigarettes somewhere else? Wasn't that an earlier version of what Qassim said? Or why am I thinking about that? Anyway, but that seems to resolve the spliff cigarette mystery once and for all. But one can't help wondering if there is some additional narrative that's been left out. For example, we don't get a sense of Jay saying anything specific. If he made a good impression, if he made such a good impression that they wanted to take him along, what did they talk about? The only aspect they convey of what Jay wanted was to charge his phone. A little bit later that he was hungry. Now, it's not clear whether he was he able to charge it. Did Qassim confirm that? Were you able to charge your phone? And if so, did he charge it to a very minimal level? Did he charge it to, say, 10% or what? Number 7, Jay was told to go into the friend's room who was asleep and to take his charger. I'm not sure if it's take his charger or to use his charger. Now, this is certainly intriguing because it puts Jay in the room with one of these sinister fellows, and worse, he's there while the guy is sleeping. Did Jay steal something from that man? His phone, his watch, something else? Because the phone charger detail seems like a non-detail. And if it's true that these guys are drug dealers, then what would they have at the Airbnb except something like that? Qassim's explanation also puts Jay in the dark, quote unquote, the dark, so to speak, with the other fella and not him. One has to wonder what the other fella's story is, because thus far he hasn't spoken to anyone. And that brings us to number 8. Qassim gets a little sleep, but an hour or so later is awoken by a buzzer. It's the doorbell of the Airbnb, and a woman and a man tell him he needs to move his car. Now, if you look at footage of that Airbnb, you can see that it is quite a narrow driveway. If you park in a way that's a little off-center, you are going to block someone else off. And so, as I say, given the layout of the Airbnb and having arrived so late, the time of day that they arrived, they may well have parked in other guests. It happens all the time when people go to parties and so on. And so one wonders also, what did these guests witness? Did they hear any noise? I wonder whether they were interviewed. Number 9, from inside the car through the rearview mirror, Qassim sees Jay outside talking to a woman. He has his trainers on and seems about to leave. Now, this corresponds to what the woman said. Now, what's interesting about this is that Jay seemed to be leaving without saying goodbye, sneaking out, as it were. I mean, would Qassim have known that Jay was leaving if he didn't go out himself? Number 10, Qassim seemed to be aware that Jay wanted to catch the bus, told him to chill out, and that he'd take Jay back, but he wanted more time to wake up properly. And so this suggests, obviously, that Jay couldn't have been properly awake, and one has to wonder, why is he so ambulant? He's been up all night. Why is he out and about? Also, that statement, chill out, is kind of quite interesting. And so that brings us to number 11. Jay told him no. He said he was hungry. This also has a bearing on Jay getting into trouble quite quickly if he was hungry and thirsty. And this information allows us to constrict the theoretical search grid from, I'm not sure, a radius of maybe 4 to 5 miles from the last ping point to perhaps less than that, 2 to 3 miles, in my opinion. Not being in that terrain is a little bit hard to say. Number 12, Qassim also tells Jay, who understands that there are buses every 10 minutes, that that's not the case. So Jay was told by the Airbnb owner that the next bus was at 10, but it seems that Jay possibly understood that to mean every 10 minutes. Once he realized it was going to be a long wait, he decided to scram. Number 13, he shut the door, meaning Qassim shut the door, and Jay walks away. Now this part's not very clear. One would imagine there would be a greeting of some sort, a handshake, some sort of gesture of thank you and goodbye. Do they part on good terms? That's quite an important question here. And that brings us to number 14. Jay is in a ditch somewhere and has been cut by a cactus. Did Lucy use these exact words to Qassim? Because Jay being in a ditch suggests that Jay had already fallen and had communicated not only that, that he was in some sort of rock obstacle, but that he was already cut and bleeding. Did he cut himself falling onto or past a cactus, or just stepping by one? Also, Lucy actually gives the Airbnb dudes an alibi, because where are they when they find out the news? Well, still at the Airbnb, still sleeping. I mean, their phones are going to put them somewhere as well. Unlike Williams Thomas, I still don't see a criminal element being more likely than the alternative. But that doesn't mean a foul play scenario can be absolutely ruled out. So I still think there is a 10% chance that there may be some criminal involvement. Obviously, there is a criminal aspect to this case in terms of some of the figures, but that doesn't mean Jay's circumstances are absolutely criminal. I mean, again, what would the motive be? Is a low-value target. One thing I don't like from this latest narrative is Qassim talking about seeing Jay from inside his vehicle in the rearview mirror. And, is there a chance that after the lady left, that that Qassim left in his vehicle and drove up to where Jay was? And I just don't think that that's the case because of these Snapchats. How would he be able to converse with his friends if he was already, taken at that point? I also don't like the scenario of Jay going into the bedroom while the other man is asleep. Did Qassim ever try to call Jay? Did he have his number? Presumably, if you get into a car with someone, have a drink with them, go with them to their hotel, you also have their number. Not necessarily, but you would presume that. Also, when Lucy called Qassim, did Qassim call Jay? Because that would be the obvious thing to do. So not trying to assist can be a potential red flag in this case. Because that is the question. Did they do anything to assist Lucy? Did he say in which direction he saw Jay going? Did he say what time? Anything like that? Does all of this mean anything either way? Well, time will tell. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.